Join our Patreon.
Do you really want to know? We are MythVision.
Dr. Price, Matt Thompson has a question. Is Dr. Bob aware of the legend that Jesus survived crucifixion and immigrated to Japan to become a garlic farmer, allegedly dying at the age of 106? I don't think it's true, but it's my favorite apocryphal Jesus legend.
Yeah, I have heard of it. I've never heard any details. I read a brief account of it once, and there was something on a news program, oddly enough, probably during Easter season. But I think it's part of the tendency to want to make Jesus the favorite son of your culture. In fact, in a lot of millenarian movements, like end-of-the-world movements in the third world, they will say that Jesus was originally one of them, and that Western missionaries stole him and made him a European or Middle Easterner and all that, and that the Bible was originally written to them, but it's been changed and redacted to be stolen from them. And that seems crazy to us, but these people likely have no real sense of history writing. And not because they're stupid, it's just hasn't been part of their pre-modern culture. And I'm very careful about that. I think it's absurd to think that one race or ethnicity is smarter than another, and so that would almost make us different species. So I don't think that, but it's a fact that certain cultures are not as advanced for good or for ill. They don't have technology yet. It's not their fault. That doesn't mean they're not intelligent, just like the writers of the Bible didn't know modern technology, but their imagination is shown in the myths they created to substitute for, what they would eventually, what people would eventually accept as science. Well, I think that that's the same instinct, and it's very likely that they just learned about Jesus through Christian missionaries. Christianity never took hold in Japan, really. There's a small minority of them, but Christianity, they were hostile to Christianity when they first started hearing about it. And I think this is a way of co-opting Christianity. Oh, your Jesus guy did exist, but he preferred to be among us. And there's a very similar thing in Afghanistan, the Ahmadiyya Muslim sect, which I really love. They're terrific. They're non-militant, they're intellectual, really great bunch. They believe that Jesus avoided crucifixion and went to the east and settled in Persia, which included Afghanistan at the time, and that he, the same story basically, taught, lived to ripe old age, and was buried in Srinagar, and that you can see his tomb, and that of somebody else who, I think a local saint of some kind. And there are popular stories, and they'll still show you the tomb and insist that Jesus is in there, though there's no chance of that. There are Afghan groups of ultra Shiites who believe that Jesus was God incarnate, and that so was Ali, the successor of Muhammad. So it's possible they got it from there, who knows. But they believe that their founder, Ahmed Ghulam, I forget the whole name, that this guy who founded Ahmadiyya, is named for him, Ahmad, that he was the prophesied return of Christ. And he eventually said he was also Maitreya Buddha and, who else? Some other one. And the Mahdi of Islam. And And they kind of liked the idea that he was Jesus and the Mahdi, but some of them began to sort of back away from him when he threw in Hinduism and stuff. But they still exist despite being universally reviled by Muslims who consider them heretics. But there's a guy who appears, I don't know the name offhand, who appears on some Fox shows, who is a sane, peace-loving Muslim, but he's an Ahmadiyya Muslim. They don't seem to understand what that is. You really can't use him as a spokesman for good Muslims. I mean, there are plenty of those too, but this guy is part of a very interesting religion. I love it. I was on a TV show of theirs once because they believe that Jesus escaped the cross, of course, when I mention it. And I was trying to explain to them that I'm not saying that happened with Jesus, but I think there's evidence in the Gospels of an earlier version of the story in which Jesus did escape the cross. And in fact, I think you can find it in the Gospel of John, where the evangelist seeks to refute it. When the Greeks, of whom nothing else is said, come up to Philip and say, "Sir, we would see Jesus." And he goes to tell Jesus, but then Jesus launches into something about the resurrection and just jumps the track. And then later he says to the crowd, "I'm going, but where I'm headed, you cannot come." And it says the Pharisees or scribes or whoever they were in the crowd say, where does he intend to go? Is he going to go among the diaspora to teach the Jews there? And again, dropped. We don't hear anymore. I would bet that this is a follow-up to the Abgarus legend, that the guys who came to Jesus brought a letter from their king and said, "Look, you're in trouble here. My kingdom's big enough for both of us. Why don't you come and take refuge with me?" And that he says, "Look, I can't. I have my destiny here, but I will send a disciple to heal you." And he does. Well, I'm guessing that there was an earlier version of this where he took him up on the offer and did go among the diaspora of the Jews, and that the reason this is mentioned at all in John is that it's an attempt to refute a current theory that he did escape and go elsewhere, because plenty of early Christians and Muslims believed that. So this kind of thing, it comes up again and again, and I think it's because they want to make Jesus their own, and they can't really imagine, like the Son of Man has to be betrayed into the hands of men, spit on, beaten, killed, and God forbid, Lord, this must never happen to you. That's the Islamic point of view. God could not have allowed his anointed one to suffer such treatment, so he didn't. And it was somebody else. That instinct is pretty strong. Yet this is why you've got to look at everything. Read even the viewpoints you think are nuts, that people consider to be nuts, and you may wind up thinking that too, but it opens up all kinds of possibilities and new ways of looking at it, and you're cheating yourself if you don't.
Join our Patreon